All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Something to Drink On. This week, the episode is very proudly named Club and Coke because we are enjoying some Canadian Club whiskey and some very enjoyable cherry Coke mixed
Right.
together. I have with me my friend Nathan Shane.
Hello.
He is a very tall, somewhat wise.
You wouldn't have to do this if you just make
But-
it a video. You wouldn't have to give this explanation of imagery. He's a tall man, about 6'3", pink shorts on, a long sleeve shirt. It's like you're giving like an APD to the police or something to like chase me down. Like,
And ladies, he's single.
I'm on Bumble.
So my friend Nathan, he has been my friend since high school. So like 9 years ago,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yes, a long time.
Yes, a long time.
We were in the same class for our driver's license.
Yes, and that was actually before we became actual friends.
Yes.
So that was interesting. A lot of connection with this man.
We've even broken up.
We have broken up a few times where we stopped being friends. And then decided to be friends again because of circumstance, which we're both happy about. And
Yes,
probably,
absolutely.
and I think we both learned how ending relationships can be bad if we just do it on a whim. But I wanted to have him on as one of my closest friends, also just kind of talk about some things concerning him specifically that I think are really cool and I hope you guys enjoy. So first thing, and this is something I'm going to start with on every podcast.
Okay.
What is your favorite color, Nathan Shane, and why?
My favorite color is red.
Why?
Bold.
Bald or bold?
Bold.
Bold.
Bald, yes. I've always associated redness with someone being bald because they're, the top of their head is red when it gets burnt by the sun. So yes, bald.
We do have a few friends who have that problem. That is the case.
Yes, we do.
So
Must be something going on in the seminary water making people go bald, apparently.
So there's the other point of connection. Nathan and I, we went to college together, and I actually started going to seminary. He did as well. We both dropped out because we're both
I dropped
scrubs.
out like the first week.
Yeah.
I didn't even get my
he
books.
He didn't
I
make it
didn't
too
even
far.
get my books. I was like, I don't have my books. Classes are starting. Clearly my motivation's not here. Yeah, I'm just not going to do this.
Yeah. So, as you can tell, he and I have similar perspectives on our impulses at times.
Yes. Yes, I can be a very impulsive person. I was actually joking about this with Joshua, who's one of our mutual friends, and I was going back, looking at my jobs, I got hired at YOC, one interview, and they hired me on the spot. Then I went to be a manager for a moving company, one interview, hired me on the spot. Manager, team lead for Goodwill, one interview, hired me on the spot. Now, want to be a manager of this moving company, one interview, hired me on the spot. And it's apparently I'm really good at presenting myself well or selling myself well, but something's going on here impulsively where I've had 4 jobs in 4 months. I was I think I need to stick to one for at least a year or something. It's getting to the point where
or at least 6 months.
Yeah.
let's start small, Nate.
Yeah, baby steps.
To be fair, though, as big of a man
gosh.
as he is, he has a very hard time having small goals. Which that's actually one of the other reasons I wanted to have him on the show. And we'll get on that in a little bit later. So you said your favorite color is red. That's actually my favorite color too.
Yeah.
I kind of told my introduction why. It's because it represents power, it represents love and courage and passion. So those are big things to me that I associate with the color red.
So alpha.
I mean, it is in some respects. It also is very much kind of what drew me into Christianity.
Yeah.
And so for you, you've had a very similar Christian background to me.
Oh gosh,
We went to the same youth group.
Another connection point. Yeah.
Which is how we became friends, is because of a summer camp that our church went to, and we just got to know each other.
A pastor of ours threatened you once that he was going to kick your ass.
Yeah, so we have some baggage
Yes.
from previous church situations.
If you pray hard enough and believe hard enough, it'll happen because God wants it to come true because He loves you.
And because you can
Scripturally supported, by the way.
And because you can pray the gay away.
But you can't be gay or else they'll kick you out of the leadership position in the church.
Right, obviously.
Okay.
So, as you can tell, we have some piss and vinegar in our hearts because of the church. Not because we don't like the idea of Christianity. I want to clarify.
Yeah.
We both still very much appreciate the idea of God. We very much appreciate the idea of what the church can be.
Even not even just God, but just a force. Just a force, a overall force that's on the side of love and connectivity and pro-life, and not in terms of, well, in terms of that too, but in terms of like creation and the planet and all human beings, like if that's a god or if that's just a force, but like an idea of something greater than the individual that exists, which is trying to connect all individuals together in a way which is encouraging people to love and sacrifice for one another. I love that idea. The issue though is that idea isn't seen a whole lot in the church typically. A lot of times the church is more about protecting its own community, where almost it becomes like its own state or almost like its own nation. Like shout out John Stemmer, who actually just gave a little sermon type deal on nationalism in the church, but it almost becomes where it's like, this is the criteria and the way you need to believe if you want to be a part of this community here inside these walls.
Yeah.
But that actually would go against the force. I mean, for me, I'm kind of more universalist in the idea, because if it's a general force, God, or a force of connecting all people together, that would transcend your religious differences. I mean, if you're born in the Middle East, you're probably going to be Jewish or Islamic. If you're born in India, you're probably going to be Hindu. And so like that's
or
a lot
Muslim.
that's like a lot of my issues with the church is like who are you to say your own religious preference is correct?
Right.
Like a lot of times it's just a product of the environment we were raised in or the community we were born in. Even denominationally, I'm not Catholic because I wasn't born into a Catholic family. If I was born into a Catholic family, I'd be Catholic most likely, or I rebel against being Catholic, but I'd still have that part as part of my story.
So as you can tell, from his undergrad degree, Nathan did pick up quite a lot from studying religion and theology, as did I. And we actually, for the most part, I agree with what you've said. For the most part, I'd almost term myself a universalist as well. I know you pretty much do it.
I own it now.
you know what it is. For me, I guess it's still a weird distinction because I still put Christ at the center of it. For me, it's not a... I mean, to some extent, it's everybody can come to God their own way, like you said.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm still like, but I like Jesus, so I prefer that approach no matter what.
Well, Jesus definitely set like a infinite example of what it means to be human.
Oh, and an amazing example for that matter. Which is, I mean, as far as I can tell, and maybe I just need to do some more studying, but is, again, my preferred idea of what we can be as humans. Like, you look at Jesus, he fought against the political systems, he fought against the religious systems.
Absolutely.
And people are like, what are you talking about? Jesus never fought. And I'm not going to quote the stupid passage of him getting cords and whipping people. That's not what I mean. What I mean is how he would preach to the people, how he would speak to the Pharisees and the leaders of the time and say, hey, this whole thing that you got going on, that's not right.
On that point, I actually was listening to a very interesting Rob Bell podcast on my way to my interview. This one was titled, Would Jesus Have Wanted Christianity?
Yeah.
And it was super interesting because it was like going into that point of when Christ came along, a lot of his stuff was like, well, who do you say I am? Or like, how do you see this?
Yep.
And like using parables to like engage in the own person's interpretation. And with Christianity, it's almost establishing again a religion with borders. And even when you look at the disciples who went out and told people about Christ, telling people about Christ and the man that you follow or the man who did these things or the events that transpired.
Or even the idea of this man that did these things that... Yeah, exactly.
The narrative of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I agree. And I am okay plugging the Robcast because I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to his commentary on religion. I actually recommend, if you're not a very religious person, or even if you are, listen to some Rob Bell.
Rob Bell has an insane amount of wisdom and insight to offer people.
Man. And it's funny, though, because like I'll listen to him sometimes, and I'll hear him say things, I'm like, but wait, there's more to that because of seminary. Like, just this background I have. And not to say that he's wrong in any way or like I feel like superior, but it's just like these moments of kind of an internal dialogue with this person I admire saying, oh, and there's this.
Yeah.
And I wish I could talk with him and just be like, oh, well, yeah, and this.
Yeah.
Just kind of having that conversation with Rob Bell would be fantastic and, pipe dream. But pipe dream it is. So now we've kind of discussed the connection Nate and I have. We've discussed theology, which, I'll be honest, I did not actually plan on talking about theology much in most of my podcasts. A couple of them because I plan to have some pastors on talking to
Yeah.
them about different perspectives, but that's more as a leadership in the church sort of
Oh,
perspective.
yeah.
Which we definitely
We
have some
both had
stories
experience in that
ourselves.
as well, and
Just
both had unique experiences with boards and
yes,
whatnot.
exactly.
So.
And I'm going to say this, and I'll probably say it again. The church can be a very loving, welcoming, healing place. It can also be a very toxic, draining, and manipulative system.
Yes.
Please, please recognize the good and the bad, no matter where you stand on that.
Yeah, that's the most dangerous thing. Is like
Yes.
if the idea is, well, I'm saved, so like I have now become a part of this like overarching community through my own salvation, and then like everything is basically perfect or taken care of through that. Maybe not here on earth, but I know I've got a perfect life in heaven where there'll be no suffering, or I know that God has my back and he cares about me. These ideas psychologically are things that we want to believe in. Like there's psychological truths, right? Like everyone wants to feel loved. We want to feel that our past mistakes don't have to limit our future. We want to feel that the worries of tomorrow we could just like push away to the back of our mind. Some people may go to drugs or alcohol. Some people may go to religion.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, the church can offer a lot of good things, but there's danger in that, like you said, where if we think the only way to come about achieving or manifesting those psychological truths is through Christianity, then we could view that there's potential to view people outside of that community as less than, or view their truths as being non-truths.
Well, that's part of it. That's the outsider negative that I see. The insider negative is more what bothers me. When you have leadership in the church and people in the church who treat people in the church in a way that makes people want to leave the church, or who abuses other leaders. Like, so say you have a pastor or you have a board who has a person they just constantly put more and more responsibility on, or don't give attention to people who are in youth ministry or children's ministry because they don't take it as seriously, or because they just think, well, you can have one pastor as long as you have a bunch of high schoolers / college kids helping you with a youth ministry of over 100 people.
Right.
Because that works so well.
Yeah.
And it's a weird system where sometimes, whether it's a pastor or a board, you see this abuse, not necessarily abuse of power. Well, obviously news stories of abuses of power.
Yeah, there's room for corruption in the church.
Right.
Even the way it works financially is a consumer-based product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, think about it. You are, as a lay person, so as a member of the congregation, you're going to church, and then what do you ask yourself? You say, do I like the sermon? Do I like the pastor?
Do I like the worship?
Do I like the worship?
Is the worship
Do
fun?
I like the songs?
Oh, gosh.
How's the child care? How's the youth group? How is the environment? Do I like the culture? And then if you answer yes to these questions, you tithe.
Yeah.
And you give money and you support.
Yeah.
If you say, I don't like this, or I don't like the new pastor, or I don't like the new worship team, you might start to give less and then leave. So it is literally a form of capitalism. Okay, I go to a restaurant, I like the steak, I like the server, I go to that restaurant, I tip well, I order more food, I don't, I go somewhere else. Yeah. And so that invites corruption and abuse of power, especially when it comes to, it invites the potential to compromising scriptural integrity.
Yes.
When it comes to how you deliver it or what you talk about. I mean, some of the biggest churches are the churches that are oh, God wants to bless you.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure God or the force for me wants to bless you, but maybe it's not necessarily financially or the way which you envision. Maybe it's character, or maybe it's like I said, like character. Like when Paul was in prison and in chains, was he being blessed financially or materially? No. But he still gave glory to God, and he learned through his prayer and his religious belief a higher level of thankfulness. Mm-hmm. A thankfulness that even though I'm suffering is a part of life. Mm-hmm. So I can be thankful in my suffering that I'm still alive.
Right.
And so he understood a higher level of thankfulness and joy And so in that way, God was blessing him.
Right.
But he wasn't blessing him through a nicer house or a nicer car. But that's
so that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to come back to that in a second. What you started to say about, us focusing so much on consumerist, capitalistic approaches to ministry. That's kind of the point I was getting to, is this abuse of power is when we get so focused on we have to be this in order to get people here. It's very easy to lose sight of how you treat the other leaders in your church. And this is on a layperson level as well as a pastoral level. And I think that's something that is really difficult when you're in that position, because you want the church to grow, because you don't want the community to die off when everybody gets old. But you also want to find a way to keep that integrity. And I think that's really difficult for a lot of churches.
Yeah.
But going back to your point about being thankful in the crap that life hands us. So that is
there's the balance.
That's actually another point I wanted to bring up with you specifically, because you and I have had a very similar past couple of years. We've had a very low points for both of us, personally, emotionally, physically.
Both, I'm sure, have experienced feelings of abandonment.
Oh, yeah.
Or experienced feelings of
being completely lost.
And loss, failure.
And within that, we've had a lot of depression.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, something recently, and I'm going to touch on this more later, something that's been really awesome to see you do is finding where you can still find hope in the midst of your darkness.
Wow.
And one of the big things for you has been, and spoiler alert, the reason I brought you on today to talk is because I kind of want to shower you with appreciation as my friend. And I also want to help people out here see that, depression, anxiety, those things are real. But there's also a very, very healthy, very loving of yourself approach to being thankful in the midst of those things. Now, I'm not saying you have to be glad that your dog died, or that, you broke your ankle and you can't play football, or whatever fill in the blank crap has happened to you. It's more appreciating the fact that you still have life and there's still somewhere to move forward to, even at your lowest point, or when you feel you're at your lowest point. Now, Nate, one specific thing for you has been your fitness.
Yeah.
Talk about that for a minute.
Well, it's been a very interesting journey for me. I mean, I don't want to get too far deep because I could talk for 20 minutes, but I do want to give some context to that. My entire life, I've been an athlete. So my fitness has been such a unique relationship. Like, my relationship with fitness and what it means to me is so unique, because I grew up playing baseball, football. I played 3 sports until high school. Then high school, I played tennis, and then football. My sophomore year, I barely even made the team. My junior year, I was JV, and then my senior year, I started varsity and made All-State Indiana my senior year, which is a phenomenal accomplishment to be able to do. Especially, even though I'm big, I wasn't I'm not super athletic. I'm not super jacked compared to people who get All-State. But through my involvement in sports and my relationship with fitness, that's become part of my identity. And I can remember my freshman year of college, I was going to play football here at AU, decided not to because I wasn't getting paid for it, because they don't give athletic scholarships. And I suffered 3 concussions my senior year. So that's another thing. I suffered 3 concussions my senior year and a groin injury, which still bothers me to this day, and I still was All-State my senior year. And so I quit my freshman year, and it was a very bad year for me. I had a very hard time just with overall aspects of life and socially, and finding my value as a person. And so it's been such an interesting relationship with how does athletic accomplishment or my fitness act as part of my identity, but then also how does that act as an outlet? And so for me, personally, part of my own personal story is I struggle with feelings of not being good enough all the time, feelings of, I'm not doing enough here or there, which is part of the reason why I've jumped from job to job. It's I don't know if I want to be here as a career. And so I have a very hard time of like accepting and seeing the good that I'm doing in relationship to like what I need to do more of.
Or what you think you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so fitness and exercising and athletic accomplishment is a way to help spark a belief in myself.
Right.
Like I was able to accomplish this fitness goal today, or lift this much, do this,
And I think the phrase you use most often is, it makes me feel more confident in
yeah,
myself.
absolutely.
And it's not just the confidence of, oh, well, I'm getting thinner. I mean, that helps.
Right.
Or, oh, I can do this more than I could yesterday. It's, I'm seeing growth in myself.
Yes.
In an area that I'm committing
That's
to.
probably the biggest thing. So a little bit more context, because I don't want to take up too much time, but
Right.
like part of through my depression is my junior and senior years of college, I put in a ton of grinding. My junior year, I was very involved at a church, and I did a lot of work with taking students to AU for basketball or weightlifting, or to my own home for just hanging out, and I wasn't paid for those things outside of the church. My senior year, I was involved in 3 different churches, paid at 2 of them. So I put in a ton of work my junior, senior year of college, and none of those things transferred into a full-time position offer. And so I got very discouraged, and it was kind of felt like I put in all this work, but I didn't get the result. Mm-hmm. Gym is like, and working out is something like, you put in the work, you see the result. So it reinforces the idea of, if I try hard and I work hard at my job or in life in general, I will, have some sort of positive result that comes from that. So it helps give me, I think you said it well, it helps act as an anchor of hope.
Right.
It rekindles.
It refocuses you.
Yeah, my hope, and it's like, if I can do this today, then if I can handle this intense workout or handle this strict diet restriction, I can handle this tough customer or this tough thing at work or in my personal life.
Right. Because you're already teaching yourself how to overcome obstacles.
Yes, which is very important for me, especially if it's already, I have doubt about my ability to do so, or if I get easily discouraged, which I do.
Right.
I need those things to boost that, to
strengthen
that.
And on that point, though, so kind of going back to something you were saying earlier, as far as, feeling like you weren't enough, or feeling like you didn't know where you were, just like in the moments that you feel lost, this being kind of your anchor. At that same time, I know there's been moments where you've been disappointed in yourself because you weren't as physically active, or you weren't as physically fit, which kind of just, helped the whole spiral fun that is
which is
depression.
Still where I'm at right now, because even though I've lost about 85 or 90 pounds since December, and that's great. Yeah. But if I compare to where I was my junior year,
you're still looking at it and saying, I'm not where I was.
I'm not where I was.
But you're also at a point now where you look at it and you still see it differently than you did a couple months ago.
I think I'm way
healthier.
Healthier approach and more mature of an individual now than I was my junior year of
because
college.
Because one of the biggest problems, and we would pick on you so much for this, is how we were like, are you sure you're a Christian? We're pretty sure you worship working out more than anything. When I can't
remember that.
Yeah, sophomore year, I remember we would kind of tease you about that because it just
seemed like when I was doing my marathon training.
Right. So we just saw it as you were constantly focused on this, and like you just said, you have a different mentality to it. You realize this is part of your life.
It's like I need it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean you're an athlete. That's natural, and I think something for me personally is I see this and I see you pursuing what is life-giving to you. And it's actually inspired me a lot. It's helped me want to pursue things myself. It's, watching you live healthier, work out, eat healthier. As like one of my friends who literally lives upstairs from me.
Yeah.
I take some of that as well. Like you notice I've been trying to eat healthier. Obviously I'm not as consistent because I don't have the same commitment you do to it.
Right.
But for me it is something that I realized, this is life-giving. And I think that comes down to kind of what we were saying even earlier. Again, where is our anchor of this is still life?
That's good.
Yeah. Even when we don't feel like we have much control, this is still life. And I kind of want to go a step further with that. So, again, both of us having felt like we've been lost, or like a job doesn't fit us, or like this isn't where we're supposed to be, or this isn't what we're supposed to do. And I know me and you, we had a long conversation about this about a week or two ago. And it was essentially, why do we worry about so much what we are supposed to be rather than who we are, where we're at, and what we're doing?
Or where we're like, or how we're growing.
How we're growing in the midst of what that is.
Yeah.
Like finding a hope in the darkness.
You can still grow, even if you're. I mean, what is it supposed to be somewhere? Like,
Right.
and this is. I mean, you're right. And I deal with those questions like this is not where I'm supposed to be. Even now, it's like I feel I'm supposed to be, involved full time at some
ministry.
organization, ministry type deal where I can help people. Right. But
instead of finding those outlets in your life naturally,
is there opportunity for me to still grow and find joy in this current season or this current
environment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the answer to those questions are yes, then I think it's something that is worth considering pursuing. And it is worth considering, sticking out, if you will, for some sort of season.
Right.
And it's so tough because it's like this season of my life, dealing with this or dealing with that. But then also you have to put in perspective of like, we're only in our mid-20s. So like what 2 or 3 years down the road, a year down the road.
Right.
I mean, it's just, that's something I enjoyed actually with John is seeing, well, he's 32, 33 and just now getting the family, getting the full-time pastor position.
Getting the master's degree.
It's like, I'm 24. Like, I see people who are younger than me or my age who already have it.
Right.
Have it. You know?
And whatever it is.
Yeah, it makes me feel better.
Even if it's not what you want, it's whatever it is.
And that's another issue is we've been taught to value that it.
Mm-hmm.
But now as we're growing as our own people, is our own personal it, our own personal imagined, like, fulfilled reality,
right,
different than the it we've been taught.
Our hallucination of what we're supposed to be.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and this is something really important. I was having a conversation with somebody else about this yesterday. We as millennials, yes, I'm using that term, don't judge me. We as millennials have this issue, and I think it is a legitimate issue for just our generation, and maybe even the generation after us, because we have this idea of we're supposed to save the world. I want you to think about this for a second, because if you look at millennials, if you look at Gen Z, you see this idea of the world is going to shit. We literally have the Amazon on fire right now.
That's a pretty big deal.
We have the ice caps melting, global warming, Trump is president, the EU's breaking up, there's neo-Nazis in America, and there's just so much...
neo-Nazis in America that are feeling empowered to claim their neo-Nazism.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's to do with the president's rhetoric or something.
That's a whole other conversation. Yes. But yeah, essentially... Well, maybe it's not a whole other conversation, but I don't want to get into it.
Yes.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
To me, I see us having this put on our shoulders at a very young age and taught that we're supposed to be the ones to fix it. That we're the ones that are supposed to go to college and get a degree and get a good paying job, or we're the ones who are supposed to go out and help people and become these savior-like figures.
Yeah, I think that might come from our experience in the Christian church. I don't know if it's all millennials.
So. I don't know, man, because you gotta look at it. There's so many people who have symptoms of depression and anxiety, so much more than prior generations.
See, I want to expand off that thought, and this is something I've struggled with as well. It's like, how much of my own fulfillment or value comes from feeling like I'm helping others or making a difference.
Right.
And I think a lot of millennials and young people feel like almost needed to make a difference or have a significant impact on the world or other people to feel like their lives matter.
Here, can I try to put a phrase to it?
Yeah.
How does my life matter?
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody is struggling with that question.
Yeah.
Because we're told that we're supposed to have a purpose.
Which is real interesting too, because that actually explains, it could explain a lot when it comes, and again, we're not going to touch on all the political issues, but something that comes to mind is like the topic of abortion, right? Is all lives, does life inherently have automatic value
just from
based upon
life.
of its own existence,
right?
From it being life,
right?
And I would dare to say that a lot of people don't think that, and they may not want to admit it. But if they are someone who could struggle, it is possible that someone who struggles with the idea of, okay, I constantly feel like I need to do more or help more to feel like my own life has value, may have an idea of life does inherently not have value, but value comes from how we go about living our lives.
Yeah.
So.
And that's my big point, because you have so many people in this point in time who don't feel like they have anything worth to contribute because they don't know where they're supposed to go.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's one of your biggest, was one of your biggest struggles. I don't know how prevalent
it still is.
I need to know where I fit so that I can do my best job.
Yeah, it's
so that I can fill this role that I supposedly have, that I'm supposed to save the world with. Like, it's this weird puzzle piece mentality that somehow
I'm constantly told, seminary,
right,
church stuff.
Right.
But what if I decided to never go to seminary?
Yeah.
And what if I decided to be a manager at a moving job and make that my career, but volunteer at some church for youth groups on Wednesdays and be involved on, communal issues or ministry issues of some sort of board discussion on Sunday afternoons.
Which, I mean,
also, the reality is being involved in churches and non-for-profit organizations, usually I'm making as good as a salary, so I'm making a better salary, and I decide to donate more money to different organizations. Right. Is that necessarily any, like, quote-unquote worse than the alternative?
That's all up to you, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it doesn't equate.
But I still don't have an answer to it.
Because it doesn't feel like it's the same, does it?
No, it doesn't. And my answer is no, it's not. But is that my answer? Is that the answer I've been programmed to believe?
Exactly.
The answer to that question is
the
latter.
We're all just meat-covered robots in the end. So, and actually, I jokingly say that, but I do kind of want to go to, and I'm going to tread very lightly, so I'm going to ask you to be patient with me as I say this. So, I might have you bite your tongue a little bit, Nate.
Okay.
So, we're all programmed primarily by our parents. Okay. So, and this is again, going along with my theory and assumption that most of us millennials have this idea of we're supposed to be something, we're supposed to do something, and we're all missing it for some reason. Or the majority of us feel like we're missing it. Mm-hmm. And we also feel like we're missing it because we're looking at those who have it, and we say, how do we get it? And I look at them, and I think of people specifically that I knew in high school, and I look at their family structures, and I say, oh, they were taught how to have it. So you know why I'm saying I'm treading lightly on this now, because we both have issues with our backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if there was a struggle with Gen X and I don't even want to say baby boomer, but the right between the baby boomer and Gen X. I can't remember what the phrase for them was. If they just missed it, if just as parents they didn't know how to cope with the reality that it was starting to slide into the world is becoming crap, we need to fix it. Trying to tell their kids, hey, you have to do something, you have to have this importance, but not knowing where to direct them. And I'm trying to say that as graciously as I can, because I don't mean to push buttons on that.
I think the failure comes from when they're trying to teach what to do instead of teaching values.
That's a part of it.
Because if you teach what to do, someone may say, I don't want to do that.
Right.
But if you can teach values of like...
Or they think if they can't do it that they're worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you can teach and model, that's the other big thing.
Yes.
You teach... Modeling sticks way more than teaching.
Yes.
And I mean, this is just
That's something you
There's
learned through
so much
working
support.
at the YOC.
Through that's my own anecdotal evidence.
Yes.
But also, I don't have any sources off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's thousands of psychological sources we could go to when it comes to modeling versus just teaching. Like, just saying, oh, this is just teaching moral values or core values that are essential to the growth of a young individual, compared to also modeling. That also is probably a big issue. And then you get into, a rabbit hole of media and social media and TV of what behavior and values are being modeled. And
but I think that's a big piece of it, though.
Yeah.
Not just modeling, but you see the Gen X versus the millennials, that slide. It wasn't just the world is getting crazy. How do we figure out where we're at? It's also technology jumped.
It's almost like Gen X and millennials have had two opposite responses to the same issue.
Yes.
The world's gone to crap. What do we do? Millennials said, we need to do everything we can, but we feel overwhelmed and we're not doing enough, we're depressed. And Gen X said, oh, we just don't care. So
I don't know if they said we just don't care. I think it was more...
Okay, maybe they feel they do care, but they feel they're not equipped well enough to make a difference, so they disengage from trying.
I could probably see that. But then that's kind of what we're slipping into as well.
We're starting to.
Yeah. So for me, I look at that and I say, oh, well, then do I have to have a place? And I think that's something that's been really freeing for me recently, is coming to the terms of, no, I just need to find what's life-giving.
Yes, that's...
And that is that goes to the modeling. That goes to the whole issue of, well, if I'm experiencing life, and I'm trying to share life, that is this purpose. That is the goal that we're really going towards, no matter what. Yeah. It's just, we have to have this ethical twist on it of, okay, well, what is life-giving to the environment around me? What is life-giving to the world around me?
I know.
Right, and it gets so much bigger when you think of it. And it's so
what's life-giving to me? What's life-giving to my family? What's life-giving? Yes. There's levels. Myself, my family, my friends, the people I agree with, the people I disagree with, the people I love, the people I hate, my enemies, the world.
Yes.
There's so many levels.
So many.
I would say that viewpoint is like Christ supported as well. Yeah. To pursue what's life-giving.
To love.
Yeah.
To love this world, to love God, to love others. That is the dream.
And it's the ultimate level is all creation, all humans and the earth.
Which, I mean, we could just say that that's God.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I am here.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right. No, I completely agree.
Some of you might be wondering. Another side note, a footnote is, it's so, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but it's so interesting to me that going back with corruption in the church, that we have a lot of this almost conservative republicanism that exists in the church of like, you're a tree hugger or you're supporting things that could possibly protect life or protect the environment, which would go into what God supports and what Christ would want to see exist, but because it's supported by this political party instead of this political party, it must be bad.
This misinterpretation as the Bible as conservatism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, and it goes both ways. Some people are probably very liberal and think any sort of conservative principles are anti-scriptural as well.
And the thing is, I lean more towards that. I genuinely do.
I'm more liberal myself, yeah.
Well, and the more I study who Jesus is and how Jesus was acting, the more it becomes harder and harder for me to look at the more conservative parts of the Bible and not just say, yeah, but that's just because you're in a patriarchal, very conservative society that developed these ideas that you were a part of. Like, that's what Jesus was coming to create.
I have several conservative friends and acquaintances, and what I've learned is most of the time it comes from an economic standpoint, and the belief is that if we pursue, my interpretation of what's been articulated to me from these individuals is if we pursue the liberal viewpoints, economically it can make our country worse, which can make the quality of life worse for individuals, so therefore the
It's
more
a more
moral
Christian
thing
thing to
to
do.
do would be to go against it.
See,
And I think there's some flawed thinking in that, but I've also tried to warm up to the understanding that there's still a good intention behind it, even if it may not capture the entire picture.
yes.
So
And I would agree with you. I think there's well-intentioned ideas on
Yeah.
both the left and the right.
yeah,
Obviously, we both would agree they both miss
yeah,
a lot of times. They sin quite often. They miss the mark.
right.
So I definitely appreciated this rabbit hole we gone down. It's not at all what I had planned. But I do kind of want to zoom back out for a second. So I'm going more surface level. I want to ask you, Nate. So with our relationship over the past 8 years as friends, we have definitely developed in each other a nerdiness, as you have developed in me a more
I can't
athletic
believe it's been 8 years.
perspective. I know it's crazy.
It feels like I was a freshman
hmm
coming to college,
Mhm.
being concerned about how awkward it would be to live on the same dorm.
After we stopped being
After we
friends
stopped being
because I
friends.
was having sex.
Well, now we almost have to explain it, but yeah.
So essentially what happened is we both came from a conservative church, youth group where sex bad, and Nate here, and I've picked on him a lot a while ago, but now I give him a lot more grace. He saw me in a relationship with a woman, and we were being sexual, and he just thought, well, I can't be friends with somebody
Yeah, because
who is sinning. Because
the idea, because how can you be my brother? How can you keep me accountable?
Right. How can you be my true friend in
How
Christ?
can you keep me accountable to live to the standard Christ wants us to when you're intentionally and willing, and like when you're making a conscious decision to go against those standards? To sin.
Against these standards that we think are what Jesus is telling us.
Even though marriage 1,500 to 2,000 years ago was you get married once your hormones start flaring up.
So that
people got married at 14 or 15. So once you start getting your hormones active.
Right.
And
well, girls were married at 14 or 15. Men often were older, actually.
17 to 18, because most of the disciples were like 17, 18, 19. But once your hormones start flaring up, females are getting married for livestock and are getting married like knowing they're waiting for a week.
Yeah.
And now we're going to you court somebody for 2 to 3 years and don't have sex. But sexual expression can be okay to an extent. To an extent. You can make out.
You can make out.
But then where's the line?
I loved hearing from, I can't remember who it was, but I loved hearing from somebody that soft petting was appropriate. But anything beyond that was sinful.
Yeah, where's
like,
the line?
Why are we giving this arbitrary line to our sexual nature?
Okay, here's a question. So, if your significant other goes down on you, and you go down on your significant other, is that okay?
We're getting more vulgar, and I appreciate it.
Is that okay?
Right.
You didn't go all the way.
You didn't go all the way. See, and that's the funny thing. Some people would say that.
Yes.
Yes.
Some people would say that's fine as long as you don't go all the way.
Probably not pastors.
But then the idea is like, okay, I think the idea of that comes from there's a risk that comes generationally that's still implanted in our brains from thousands of years ago tied to this religion, which we call Christianity, of if you go all the way, there's a risk of pregnancy.
No, I disagree. That actually wasn't the main issue. In my opinion, I don't think that was the main issue. The main issue was if you went all the way, you lost your virginity and what made you worth trading,
your purity.
Which made you merit material.
You lost your purity.
You lost your, and that's the thing. So,
because there's a hyper focus on purity too.
I love those rabbit holes, but they're much more religious than I expected. So for me, I look at the tradition of marriage, of women really being valued as something that was traded to another man in order for him to inherit his line. And that's why men had to pay the fathers a dowry. Yeah. That was the original idea behind it. Is like, I want your daughter so I can carry myself forward.
And that's why also they wanted sons.
Right. Because daughters weren't as worth it. Or they were more work because you had to make sure they didn't have sex. Otherwise...
They also couldn't carry on your family name.
Right. Otherwise, that woman was not marriageable.
Yeah.
She was not
But
to
we
be
saw
wed.
this with Mary and Joseph.
We saw this with Mary and Joseph. He about divorced her or didn't even get married to her because she was pregnant already.
Yeah.
So that idea, that mentality of, well, you're impure because you didn't, or because you're not marriage material anymore, that has developed over centuries and over the time frame of modern society of, well, now instead of saying you're impure, it's just, let's term it virginity. And let's not just term it virginity. Let's stack on top of that, oh, this is your holy, sacred purity. And we had this religious connection.
And it's part of your value.
Right, it's part of your value.
Part of your Christian value,
right.
part of your identity.
Right.
And if you lose it...
Because if you lose it, you're sin.
Yep. And
you're
it's a sin you can never take away.
It's a sin you can never take away.
It's a sin that can never be repaired.
This God
if you lied to someone,
allowed his son
I could
to
come
die.
to you and make amends and say, I lied to you and here's why. But once you lose your virginity, it's gone forever. Yep. It's the one sin that there's no way to make amends for.
So what are we still telling? So what are we still telling men and women and men now? At least for sexism purposes and for equality purposes.
Absolutely.
Men have this idea too of, if you have sex, you're not pure. You're not marriage material anymore. That idea has developed so much to that point. So, but there's this dynamic now, and well, I guess it has been around for a while, of men that if you don't have sex, then you're not a man. But as a Christian man,
it's part of toxic masculinity.
If you do have sex,
don't need to go down a rabbit hole.
Right. But if you do have sex, then you lose this image of God in you that can't ever be replaced. Even though Jesus died,
is also not scripturally support at all.
Right, which Jesus
tons of disciples and people he ministered to, and accepted into his own ministry to love others that were sexually definitely impure. I mean,
right. The woman at the well.
The woman at the well. The woman who threw a line in the sand. Everything.
Well, and I prefer the woman at the well story, and here's why. What does he do? He says, "Oh, you've been with many men who weren't your husband." And she's like, "Okay, you know my life. What's up?" And he says, "I am the one who's to come." Not only does she immediately have this sense of, I am worthy of him speaking to me, which was impossible. Because she couldn't even go out and get water with everyone else. Because she was impure.
Yeah, that's why she was out there at that time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
She goes back to the city, and everyone in the city comes out to see this man. So through this one woman who was not good enough to go get water with the other women who were treated as property, had a whole city come out to meet Jesus and receive this new teaching. And women can't be leaders in the church.
Because of some misinterpretation of a passage in Corinthians where someone we think may have been Paul but probably wasn't, was writing to a church in Corinth about, even though there's a bunch of sexual corruption where people are literally sleeping with their mothers.
Yeah, it's a mess, man.
It's what happens when you don't understand context. And that's also what happens, unpopular opinion, when you think the Bible's the Word of God, which it's not.
We're going to leave that one there. We're going to let them fight it out in the comments. If they comment, we're going to let them put it there. We're going to let a Facebook argument happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that got a lot deeper than I meant it to, but that was a very good rabbit hole to go down for a moment. So the reason I wanted to invite you on the podcast is because, Nathan, you have inspired me. As my friend, you have shown me somebody who can commit to growth and can commit to being healthy in a lot of ways, which has helped me in the midst of a lot of the shit I've been going through. And I don't want to assume, but I think I've been the same to you in some moments, at least.
You've definitely helped me grow in a lot of ways.
And it's been really helpful to have a friend, not a friend in Christ, because we left that a long time ago, but a friend in humanity, a friend in life, a best friend, a brother, who does help me grow, who I can see grow and continue to cheer on, and not look at. And if you ever do have it, if you ever find your it, I will be rooting you on the entire way, and I know you'll be doing the same for me.
Absolutely.
And it's great to have that kind of relationship. And I used to think that I didn't have the potential for having that sort of a relationship. Because for me, I was a super nerdy kid who didn't know any better and wasn't athletic. And through being friends with you, you've learned to embrace that nerdy side of you that you were kind of deprived of as a kid.
Yes,
And
I
then,
wasn't allowed to watch Harry Potter.
right. And then as you got older, you also felt you couldn't participate in because you were an athlete in some ways.
It's funny though. I've thought a lot of my friends have been more nerdy than jocks.
Yeah. Because you are more understanding than a lot of people are. I think you've taken time to learn and grow and have had enough confrontations with people butting heads that you're like, okay, I'm at least going to hear you out first. And then I'll decide if I think you're full of shit or not.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Which I think that's an amazing thing, and I think that's something that helps bring life.
Yeah.
And so, as my friend, I appreciate you, I love you, and I'm so glad that I could sit and talk with you. I actually wasn't planning on inviting you on because I didn't think about this. And I started thinking about it today when I was at work, and I was like, Nate has a story.
We all do. Yeah.
We all do. And it's simple. It's of a person who is struggling to find who he is. And that's where we're
struggling to find it. Yeah.
And
That's the thing with a lot of it. If you just completely sell out into the Christian blueprint,
yes,
you found the it.
Wow.
If
you sold
out,
if you completely sold out into it,
if you completely bought into it and sold into it, you found the it.
Mm-hmm.
There's the it. There's the blueprint. There's what you're supposed to do. You follow the steps. You wait until you're married to have sex. You do all this
until somebody pokes a hole in it.
If they do that, you just cut them out of your life.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
but I'm saying if you let it affect you though, and you realize there's something else out there, and I think you've had this.
You don't let it affect you.
Obviously.
Yeah, you're creating a good point, but the response typically that's had is you stop talking to that person, you cut them out of your life, and then you reinforce the beliefs that you've chosen to follow.
Right.
So you re-dive into church even harder.
Until that person is worthy of your friendship. Again.
Which the only way they become worthy is to probably fit into the cookie cutter mold that you set out.
Or at least close enough that you can accept them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is two things we've also struggled with.
Yep.
I still struggle with one of the
with
acquaintance groups.
People who have cut us out and decided to cut us out simply because they had this idea.
Yeah. But if you're that is the biggest issue with this universalist or constantly questioning thing road is
this postmodern reality.
Yes, it's hard to find the it because it's like I don't believe there's an objective truth.
Right.
Everything, even objective truths, are influenced by subjective realities.
Right.
Like, I mean, again, to bring up abortion, if there's a point where there's 10 billion people in the world and we're consuming the world's resources and the world's going to die, what's the moral? Where does the moral line shift to in terms of abortion? That's a human life. Well, that's another mouth that's taken from the world's environment. When the world had 2 million people, of course, any type of murder or abortion would be seen as awful. You're right, and so any type of objective idea is still being interpreted through the lens of the individual and all their influences, so it becomes subjective. But if you don't believe in objective truth, there's no way. It's so hard to find the it because the it for most of the Christians we're talking about, they believe the objective truth is Christ and is the Christian God.
Right. See, and it's funny because I'm sure we have people who are listening to this saying, I'm sick and tired of this damn interpretation.
Oh my God, I almost just spat out my drink. I literally just almost spat out
my drink. Sorry, that's an inside joke for us. But it's true because it's hard, and not to pat ourselves too hard on the back, but it's hard to have a postmodern approach to understanding the world around us. Because other people either think we've just completely lost touch at times,
or we're sinners,
or we're sinners, or we just and ourselves we also struggle because we don't have that confidence of the it.
Yeah.
We don't have this thing that we can just hold on to and say, yep, this is it.
Exactly.
You know, when the storm's coming, we can't hold on to it because we're like, well, I mean, yeah, there's
Jesus
something.
is my rock.
Jesus is my rock.
Yeah.
And he rolls my troubles away. I still love that song, though, as cheesy as it is.
He takes me out on the oceans.
Right, but it's true, though, to some extent. Like, we have this reality of what life is.
Yeah.
And we're constantly learning what that is and expanding what that is because it's an amazing feeling to have more understanding. Would you agree?
Yes.
So for me, I look at that and I say, well, then what about this it? What about this it that you and I were both taught that we had to have? And as we get older, we keep struggling with it, and we keep thinking, well, we don't have it anymore, or we lost it, or...
What does it mean for us?
Or what does it mean for
our
us?
Our identity, our growth, our future,
right.
The robes we're on, everything.
And when we're so focused on the it, when our life is not about the it.
Or that it we've been taught to believe is it.
Well, and I mean, I would argue that we're both kind of at the point most times where we say, screw it. We don't care about the it. We want to figure out what's here. Or at least I know I am. That's where I'm at. I think that is where we have this kind of this conflict within us. Because it's really hard to say, well, I want to have a family, I want to have this, I want to have a job, I want to have a house. There's people I know who have houses, who have jobs, who have families. There's also a lot of single mothers on Tinder and Bumble. And it comes down to the point of saying, I want it. But where do I fit in it anymore?
Yeah.
And for me, it's kind of come to the point of saying, well, maybe I should stop worrying about having it, or being in it, or how I relate to it, but rather what I want my growth and my life...
Well, the question is, what is it?
No, it's not even that. It's more so of, why do I have to care about it?
Well, but the care is part of it as well. But for what is it is what have you been taught to believe it is, and why do you feel that it matters?
Oh, but we already know that. We already have that understanding. I think the biggest struggle now is saying, is that still something I want to pursue? If it's not, then what is my way? What is my groove in life? Where is my life at that I can continue pursuing?
And that's what makes it so hard, because it's always easier to grow when you're anchored.
Yes.
And so, if you have an idea of it and you're sold out to believe of whatever your own personal it is, it's easy to grow as a person. But when you're still trying to figure out what is my own it, and why do I not believe the it that was taught to me, and why do I not feel I want to invest in that it, it's really hard to grow as a person when you're basically unanchored.
Mm-hmm. And so for you, it's been helpful having this focus on fitness, focus on health, that you can grow from. And it's not even your it. It's a piece of who you are.
Yes.
It's a focus on who I am rather than it. That's where we're going. That's what I've been looking for. It's about who we are, what our life is, rather than finding it.
What it's supposed to be?
What it is supposed to be.
Yeah, and why it's supposed to be that.
Doesn't matter. It's who we are, where our growth is, where we want ourselves to be. It's about accepting that. It's about finding the meaning in that, not it. That is what we already have.
And true friends support that.
True friends support it. And it's also this whole paradigm shift of, I have to keep chasing, and feeling like you're just constantly chasing your prey. And when you get it, well, there's another it along the road. You have to keep eating. You have to keep chasing it. Rather than being like a tree and growing through those pains, having those growth spurts and those stunts and seeing what that becomes. I think that is what we need to focus on in our lives.
But again, it's hard to grow if you don't have the roots planted.
It is, and I think that's where it comes back to, well, what are our roots? Things that give us life.
Yeah.
Literally.
For me, this is the thing, is also, it comes to a level of like the energy, the power, the the reality all exists within myself.
Yes.
So all exists inwardly within us. And we see this with the idea when we articulate this belief or this potential reality in the phrase of Christ is in me. So an idea of the strength, the passion, the ability to overcome all of these things that we would like to be able to envision ourselves doing when we want to get to sleep at night and we envision a reality, a dream of ourselves. We say, Christ lives in me. Well, those realities, those characteristics, those attributes exist within a potential form of ourselves. And so if we recognize that and we accept that, then our own anchors, our own roots stem from ourselves. And this is where you get a lot of conflict with universalism or a lot of postmodern ideas, is that can exist outside of Christianity.
Yep.
But that is considered blasphemous. So,
well, and that's the thing. If we do take it just to the universalist perspective, what are our roots? What is Christ in me? Let's just expand that and say, well, God is in me.
Yeah.
That can go to any religion. The universe, I am very much a piece of it, and it is a piece of me. The way I like to say that is, we are all part of creation.
Yes.
Creation is a part of us.
Yes.
God is a part of creation. Creation is a part of God. That is our life. That is our source. How we feed into that and feed off of it. That's how we find true growth. Not pursuing it, but finding what's already in us and developing it in a way that we find peace, that we find joy, that we find love for ourselves, rather than seeking it for ourselves or seeking it from others. Wow, this got a lot deeper. Yeah. Much deeper than I ever expected this to.
Right.
It's probably the alcohol talking at this point, because I know we've been in circles and we've been circling around this idea, but I love that we landed here.
Yeah.
So, Nate, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Absolutely.
This has been a pleasure. Honestly, for whoever's listening, this was just a conversation between us. This was just another Thursday night. But hopefully you've taken something away from this. Hopefully you want to put something in the comments, giving your own perspective, telling us what you liked, what you didn't like. We'd love to hear back and have another conversation. Maybe have something to drink on later. But I'm your host, No Crook. This has been Nathan Shane, and I hope you enjoyed your Canadian Club and Coke.
Something to drink.